Welcome back to Face the Nation. I'm John Dickerson. U.S. intelligence warned this week of a possible al-Qaeda terror attack in New York, Virginia, and Texas just one day before the 2016 election. How real is that threat? CBS News senior national security analyst Fran Townsend and Washington Post columnist David Ignatius are here to tell us. David, I want to start with you. How significant was it that it's al-Qaeda in this case? We've heard a lot about ISIS. But how significant is that it's al-Qaeda, and how serious is this?
First, it's important that this is core al-Qaeda, which means the fragment of the organization that's left in Afghanistan, principally. I'm told that this intelligence came after the killing of a key al-Qaeda operative, Farouk al-Qahtani, who was an operations planner in Kunar province in northeastern Afghanistan 2 weeks ago. So his discussion of operations plans is where this began. It's taken seriously because it's specific. It names 3 states, it names a time. One reason that an official said we're not in panic mode about this is that core al-Qaeda is a long way away. It has great difficulty organizing operations today. It is not seen as an imminent threat. The terrorism issue, I think, that concerns the FBI, Homeland Security most is the lone wolf homegrown problem. Somebody who gets a gun and goes to a polling place motivated by all of the stuff that's online. But in terms of this threat, it's specific, it was disseminated, but the reasons officials think that it's not a 3-alarm fire.
And the reason is because the ability to carry out an operation has been degraded over the last few years from attacks on al-Qaeda?
This planning comes from core al-Qaeda, again, from a key operations planner who survives, who's now dead, but who survived, and his conversations with his operatives. The question is the ability to carry those plans out, and people think it's fairly limited.
Fran, let me ask you, so this information comes, what happens on the Homeland Security end with this kind of information? What can be done? What is being done?
Well, first of all, John, I would say that they've identified about over a dozen operatives who have been deployed. They've been trained over the course of 3 years in the Afghanistan-Pakistan region, and they've been brought back to the United States. And so as David points out, DHS will work with state and local officials and law enforcement. Here in New York, we know that they've stood up a task force to try and identify investigations where operatives have traveled and might fit that profile so that they can try and disrupt it.
All right, Fran, got a little laryngitis there. Thank you for that. David, let me ask you now, another threat that we've been talking about on Election Day that people have been worried about is the threat of some kind of disruption. There's been a lot of talk about the Russians. The Vice President said that these hacked emails, the WikiLeaks emails, and also the hacked emails from the Democratic National Committee trace back to Russia. What's the status of that now in terms of U.S. operations responding to Russia and the worry of some disruption on Election Day? 2
top officials, our Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, and the Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, issued a statement last month in which they were very specific. They said that the most senior level Russian officials must have approved the hacking that's been done of Democratic officials, of Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta. And I'm told that since then there was a private warning, I believe by President Obama himself, to Vladimir Putin saying any further Russian attempts to interfere in the U.S. election would have the most serious consequences. I'm told further that officials believe that the Russians have not escalated their attacks. They seem to have gotten the message, although people are very careful. They're watching each event. There's a cyber war room set up for Tuesday to monitor any attempt to intrude. I'm told finally that although Vice President Biden warned of U.S. reprisals, none have been taken so far against Russia. And the reason is there's a desire to avoid any kind of cycle of escalation in this very difficult period before the election.
Fran, on Election Day, how might we see disruption from those who wanted to mess with the election returns?
You know, John, I think we normally think of it like DDoS attacks, like the recent one we saw. What I really worry about is something more sort of pervasive and insidious. Imagine massive text messages going out to voters saying polls are closed or poll locations have closed that might affect voter turnout. I think that's more insidious and more difficult for officials both to react to and to detect.
Right, so instead of actually hacking the infrastructure, but actually just misinformation, a lot of different messages. David, I want to switch to the FBI quickly here at the end. James Comey's come under some criticism for his handling of these emails. There are now leaks coming out of the FBI at a pace that seems new, or that seems more messy than we've seen before. What do you make of what's going on right now inside the FBI?
Well, first, the FBI right now is very leaky. You're never sure people who claim to be speaking on behalf of FBI agents or to have spoken to them. You don't know whether that's true or not. But it's a law enforcement agency that's in turmoil, and that's something that everybody should be worried about after the election. A strong FBI is crucial. If Secretary Clinton wins on Tuesday, it's possible she may end up being glad that James Comey surfaced this issue of additional emails under investigation, because it reduces the possibility that you can say later that this was suppressed and rigged. It's conceivable. Right now, within the Clinton camp, James Comey is not their favorite person, obviously, but it's possible if she wins, she'd say this made for a more stable transition.
And Fran, thanks so much for being with us. David, thank you also for being with us. We'll be right back with our political panel.